Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and life and simplify them. And friends, I want to talk about our physical bodies today. This kind of leans more into the self-care and wellness realm of simplifying. And I want to talk specifically, zoom in to that wonderful tummy in the middle of your body. And specifically, because maybe, okay, it's selfish, it's for me. I really want to learn how to improve our digestion. Let's simplify that topic today. Well, my special guest is Tyler Mayoras, and he's giving a glow up to the world's most underappreciated superfood, which is the bean. A passionate impact investor and an entrepreneur, he co-founded a company called Cool Beans with the vision of bringing sustainable whole food goodness to the frozen food aisle. Now, inspired by his own journey towards a plant-based diet, he's making it easier than ever for all of us to eat more clean, minimally processed food that's really good for our body, our soul, and most importantly, the planet. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Tyler Mayoras. Hey, Tyler.
Hi. Thanks, Mary. Thanks for having me. And that was probably the best lead-in I've ever heard.
Thanks.
Of my bio. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. And I'm so pleased that your team reached out to me because they've done their homework. I have gone vegetarian as of last September 2020. I'm not quite fully vegan and plant-based. It's so hard to let go of the dairy, but I'm getting there. I'm removing it bit by bit every single week from my diet. I'll be there probably by the end of this year, if not sooner. But
congrats on that.
Thank you. Well, Michelle Kane of World of Vegan, I had her on the podcast in season 3, and she really kind of tipped me over the edge. Her episode, specifically 131, was all about how to stock a plant-based pantry. And episode 141 was all about how to go vegan. And so she challenged me, and I said, you know what? I'm already like 90% of the way there. Might as well go the other 10%. And I have been so pleased that I have, really, truly.
That's great. That's great. She's great. I love Michelle. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, maybe my own personal selfish pursuits and understanding our gut health and digestion is at play here. And I dare say probably the dairy is not doing any favors for me. Let's be real. But why do you think it's so important to focus on gut health right now? Like, why is this the thing for whole body health and wellness?
Right. I think very few people really realize how important the gut is for health in general. It really controls all of our immunity.
Yeah.
It controls our mental health. And then it controls what we crave to eat. So when you hear people say they've gone plant-based and their taste buds changed, it's not really their taste buds. It's the gut bacteria has changed within their gut, and it's now making you crave different foods. So that's really why the gut is so important, because you can't improve your overall health without improving your gut health.
Yeah, and it reminds me back to another episode that I did a long while ago. Dr. Daniel is a functional medicine specialist, and he was talking about the brain to gut axis, how the things that are happening in your gut is also affecting your mental health and the brain
Absolutely.
fog and all of that stuff. It's fascinating.
It really is, absolutely. And there's a great book by Dr. Will Bolsowitz called Fiber Fueled. And I highly recommend all your listeners read it, because it's just all about what gets controlled by the gut and all that benefit. And one of the things he talks about is to really focus on trying to eat 30 different plants at least per week.
Yeah.
Because that then fosters a whole wide range of gut bacteria, good gut bacteria that can grow in your gut and then help your overall health and immunity.
So, just as you say that, I'm like, do I even know 30 plants that I can eat? So let's just do a quick fire of plants that can be eaten. Kale, lettuce.
Yes.
What else? Green beans?
Oranges, apples, green beans, peas. I mean, every week I eat a lot of beans and a lot of variety of beans. And each one of those different variety of beans counts, because it provides different it fosters the growth of different gut bacteria. But yeah, so it's interesting. I've been keeping a log probably for the last 2 months, And I thought I was doing really well because I was getting like 50 different plants per week.
Wow.
And then we did a clubhouse room specifically talking about the number of plants you eat in a week.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple people in there that eat more than 100 a week.
Wow.
And so it's really easy to do, but it's getting multiple kinds of leafy greens and multiple kinds of cruciferous vegetables and legumes and pulses and fruits, etc.
Yeah, and I imagine we'll go deeper into this in just a bit about kind of food diversity and all of that. But I also imagine it just creates variety on your plate. It makes you actually salivate when you see a rainbow of colors shown on your plate rather than just sort of brown, which is a lot of processed junk food that's out there. It's just all brown, right?
Well, one of the really interesting things about going vegan was I feel like I eat so much more taste than I used to. And that's because of the spices. And spices count as a different vegetable. So, you have 6 different spices. Those are different vegetables. And that is really what brings out. We're all grown up on this salt, sugar, and fat diet, and it's very bland at the end of the day. And when you add the different spices from different parts of the world, it just lights up what you're eating.
Yeah,
so absolutely.
It's true. It's true. When did you go vegan? How long ago?
About 4.5 years ago.
And what sparked you?
2017.
Yeah.
So I was at a conference in 2016 that was talking, and I was an food and agriculture investor. And I was at this conference that was talking about the animal impact, the climate impact of animal agriculture. And they talked about a 15%, that 15% of all greenhouse gases were caused by animal agriculture. And I just didn't believe them. I thought it was wrong. So I went back to Chicago, dug into the numbers myself, used USDA data and EPA data, and I came up with 16 to 19%.
Wow.
And I just said, that's just crazy. What I didn't want to do was someday wake up from a fog and basically my grandkids are asking, well, if you knew this, why didn't you do something about it, Grandpa? And I didn't want to be that person. So
well, and it is shocking, and I think a lot of us are starting to wake up to this as a reality now. It feels like it's it's on people's tongues. It's what people are talking about now more than ever before, just because maybe we just were ignorant to it. We didn't even know that this was a thing. We're a society that's built on fast everything, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and we if you looked at the different generations, my generation and the generation before, we wanted our Pop-Tarts in the car, fast, easy. We didn't care what was in them, but they had to be convenient. And it's a different world now. Millennials and Generation Z care what's in the food. They want to eat healthy and clean, and they care about the climate impact of everything and the packaging impact as well.
So specifically talking about our digestion, so, bringing it back there and some people might be like I was a year ago, teetering on the edge and thinking, how do I eat more plants in my diet? Or no, I'm ready to eliminate meat altogether and just move towards a plant-based diet or a vegetarian diet. When our guts are out of whack, it does change everything. It makes me not want to work. It just makes me kind of feel a little bit lethargic and bleh. It does affect so much of your, health and wellness and outlook on life, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'll give you just a quick example. I had one daughter who was really having digestive issues. She wasn't, all the things that you would think of, that she was all bound up, et cetera.
Yeah. And
she was very, very frustrated. And I said, well, why don't you just try this for a couple of weeks? Give up the dairy all together and eat these bowls that I eat every morning and just see how you feel. And the bowl it's basically frozen blueberries that have been thawed the night before.
Yep.
And flaxseed meal, walnuts, and then a little bit of acai. I use a half a packet of acai, and they taste great. But more importantly, they keep things moving, and just everything is, from a digestion standpoint, is great. And she had such a great experience with that. She ended up becoming a pescatarian. She never went back to dairy and didn't want to ever have it. And she's actually doing an experiment on vegan for the last month to just give it a try. So I think the results are there, and you feel so much better. And it's almost, once you go that way, it's really hard to want to go back.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I'm not a doctor. You're not a doctor. But we have personal antidotes of things that have worked in either our lives or, in our families' lives as well. And it's amazing to me how if my eating goes off the rails and I go back to fast food or things that are really fully chemicals and processed, it only takes about a couple of days before everything's just like, bleh,
Oh, yeah. That's exactly right.
Equally, the flip side is it only takes a couple of days to get your digestive system back on track when you really are truly eating clean, minimally processed, plant-based foods. It's fascinating to see how fast your body goes, oh, yes, this is good. This is what I need, right?
Yeah, well, I've heard Dr. Bush talk on Dr. Zach Bush. He's a gastroenterologist and fascinating guy, and he talks about the impacts of glyphosate and some of these other things on our gut. But one of the things he talks about is that in just like 2 weeks, you can completely transform your gut bacteria to healthy, good bacteria that are craving plants. Conversely, in just something like if you go back to eating a meat-heavy diet, it transforms in less than 5 days back the other way. So it's a very quick transformation for sure.
Wow. And so you alluded to it earlier, and I want to take a deep dive. So what actually is the big secret behind beans being a superfood? How do you incorporate more beans into your diet?
Well, two different questions there. Let's start with why they're so good. First of all, what your gut needs, the good bacteria needs fiber.
Yeah.
And 95% of Americans are deficient in fiber. You're supposed to get something like 22 or 24 grams per day, and most people don't.
Yeah.
And fiber only comes from plants. You can't get it from any animal foods. So it comes from basically beans are a big source, nuts, cruciferous vegetables. And in fact, all plants have some amount of fiber, but some have a lot more than others. So that's number one. Number two is certain things don't digest in your stomach. So that would be beans and cruciferous vegetables. And they go down into your colon and your lower intestines. And that's where the good bacteria live. So if something's digesting in your stomach, it's not actually getting down. So like when people take a supplement, a probiotic supplement, for the most part, that's really not doing anything because it's not actually getting to the good bacteria down in your lower intestines. So it just gets burned up by stomach acids. So you really want things that don't get digested so that they can get down there and then feed the good bacteria. So that's why beans are so critical. And then they also have a lot of other phytochemicals and nutrients and whatnot. But that's the primary benefit is their ability to get down deep into your gut.
So interesting to me. And specifically incorporating more beans into your diet, I know I love a good black bean. I couldn't get very many of them. I had to really snuff them out and find them in my grocery stores in England. But now that I'm back in Texas, man, it's like bonanza over here with black beans.
Yeah, and you try black-eyed peas too as a substitute sometimes. They're a little less, maybe they're similar levels of fiber, but they don't taste, different taste, basically.
Yeah. Which are your favorite beans?
I do love black beans. I really like kidney beans, pinto beans, and black-eyed peas. And then my favorite vegetable in the world is peas, green peas. We cook those up with salt, pepper, and smoked paprika. Amazing.
Nice.
Just amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
So.
And I've also been playing around with cooking beans in my Instant Pot as well, just to make a big, nice batch for the week and, incorporate it here and there into a salad or into a soup or otherwise as a side item. I've just been finding, just to have a little bit of a playful approach to it is really helping to kind of integrate some of these things into my diet or my on my plate every single week.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I want to head off, because there's a crazy doctor out there, kind of a quack, who's really out to sell supplements that says beans are bad for you and tomatoes, skins, and things like that. The reality is, if you cook beans, the lectins that are in the shell or the outside of the bean all disappear when you cook them. And so none of that's true, but he sells a lot of supplements as a result of that. And that's his business.
It's wild. Well, and this is the day and age of misinformation that spreads so fast. And that's part of why our podcast exists, is to find the truth, find the experts out there who will simplify the truth down. Because I think this is what it is. There's so much out there, and we don't really know like how to eat well and exercise more and get enough sleep and all the things. And so what happens for a lot of people is they just get super overwhelmed and they head straight into a fast food drive-through, right? They just they press the big red F it button and just choose easy. And there's so much more. There's better out there, right?
Yeah, and I would recommend that your listeners go to, if they ever have a question, go to nutritionfacts.org, which is run by Dr. Michael Greger. And he's a board-certified physician, and he runs this site completely for free. Yeah. He has books that he sells separately, but this site has no paid sponsorship. It's completely objective, and he looks into anything. So if you say, oh, I've heard soy is bad for me, and he'll look into the studies, and he finds the studies, and he's got little videos that talk about all these different things, including beans and lectins and all these things, and he narrows it down to what the truth is, and he's a great resource that's very objective.
That's brilliant. And all the things that Tyler brings up in today's conversation, just a side note, everybody, you can find that over at the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. So you can find links to Tyler and all of the good stuff that he's doing in the world, but also to nutritionfacts.org and all the books that we talk about as well. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Because again, I think it just takes time and effort. But ultimately, for me, you just have to listen to your body. Like when your body is angry and grumpy and your digestion's all out of whack, or your poops are just not very normal, then that's a clear sign that something's not right.
Something's wrong.
Something needs to get changed, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you said it perfectly.
So talk to us about food diversity. Why do you think this is important? And why do you think people are headed more down the plant-based aisle now?
That's a great question. I love that they are. I think I wrote an article, I called it The Fourth Wave, which is, you went through the hippie movement, which was about plant-based, and then you went through the 90s. There was a kind of a wave about low fat and whatnot.
Yep, I remember that.
But but that never raised the bar to more than about 1% of the population being vegan. But then I think it was 2005, when the China study came out, that really changed things. T. Colin Campbell, and it's been increasing pretty dramatically in the last 5 years. It's gone up to about 3% of the population. 9.6 million people are vegan now, or identifying as vegan. But if you looked at millennials, it's much higher than that, and supposedly Generation Z is closer to 10%. And it's just this trend that people see the benefits. It's now a three-legged stool. It's climate change. It's the animals, and then it's your health. And so that's just growing the total pie, which is great.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about it for myself when I finally flipped the switch and said no more to meat. What actually sparked me? When you think about the animals in particular, I just go, God, that is wrong that we are eating animals on a regular basis. We're not cavemen back in the day. Like we're completely evolved. And is it really necessary to eat meat and still have a balanced diet? No, right?
Well, and what's more is the way we treat them. I mean, if you're gonna, I wouldn't do it, but if you're gonna hunt animals, I can understand it a little bit more. It's a one-on-one relationship, but the way we treat these animals for all of their life is just horrendous.
Right.
Factory farms, and 90% of all meat comes from factory farms. So And unfortunately, people talk about the grass-fed movement and some of these other things solving the problem. It can't solve the problem. There's not enough grass in the world to feed all those animals. We're always going to have factory farming if they continue to eat meat at the rate that they're eating meat.
Yeah, and I always think about like those grass-fed or uncaged hens for eggs. That's all PR, isn't it? Like it's
For the
that's
most
just
part, yeah,
fancy wordings to make you feel better about this purchase you're making. Because I think what happens, and Michelle mentioned this in her episode, is that we've as a society, and I'll put my hand up first to say this was me. We're so far detached from living animal to processed chicken nugget on our plate and not seeing that thing came from a living, breathing animal. I think that's also, because we're not actually going out and hunting for our meals. We're so detached. It's just commodities and shaped in funny animals.
It creates a numbness. Yeah, it creates a numbness that we don't feel the pain and don't think about it. And oftentimes, family members and whatnot, when I tell them something, they're like, "Oh, no, don't tell me. I don't want to hear." And it's because I don't want to know that, because then I'll change. So yeah, that's part of what's going on.
Yeah, you kind of have to face the facts of it whenever you see those documentaries on Netflix. Otherwise, you go, "Oh God, that's right. That these animals are actually bred, fattened up, in order for us to sell plump, juicy, quote unquote, chicken breasts at the store." So it does awaken your eyes and to what actually is in the industry of selling meat and foods that are super processed or full of chemicals. So back to food diversity then, like we were talking about earlier, it's about a diversity of colors on your plate and diversity of textures as well, right?
Yeah. So if you think about our gut, the number of bacteria, we're actually more bacteria than we are human. We're all throughout our body.
Yeah.
And in our gut alone, there's more gut bacteria in our gut than the stars in the sky. So it's a huge, huge organism. And each one of the good bacteria craves a different thing. Mm-hmm. So some of them really like blueberries, and some of them really like kidney beans and whatever. And so that's really the whole point of getting the gut, getting plant diversity, because you're getting all these different foods that then feed that good bacteria and get you a really good overall mix that helps your immunity and optimizes health.
Yeah, because I imagine also when your body's a little bit out of alignment, sometimes what solves that is good spicy vegetable broth or something that has spices in there that adds heat. But other times you're looking for something that's very watery and soothing, like watermelon or various kinds of oranges or citrus or things like that. Right. So it's also like listening to your body and to what it really is asking for and reprogramming those kind of instant cues that go, I need ice cream. I need a cheeseburger. I need this or that, to something that actually is long-term healthy and satisfying those cravings. Right.
Yeah. And if you're eating 100% plant-based diet, you almost can't eat less than 30 plants. Really, unless you're just eating vegan junk food, which there's a lot of that, including Oreos. As long as you're eating whole foods, you're going to get 30 plants. And it's all those different colors like you talked about, because you want fruits, because they're going to bring in certain vitamin C's and other vitamins. And then you want the cruciferous vegetables. And then so it's absolutely, you want a blend of all of it.
Nuts as well, right?
Yeah,
it's interesting. When we took the leap last fall, I should back up and say that my 10-year-old son had already been vegetarian for 2 years prior to that. So, he was already well on the way. He started when he was 8. And so for me, it wasn't that hard. Like, we removed red meat out of our diet years ago. And then the last thing was just chicken, just slowly taking one thing out of your diet, but replacing it with 5, 10, 20 new things that maybe weren't on our plate on a regular basis in the,
Right.
Fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, all of that. So there was never any sort of scarcity of like, oh, I'm missing this, and replacing it with something else.
So I'm very, very curious. How did your 8-year-old decide to go vegetarian? Because usually that's impacted by parents or something.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, he's brilliant. Let's just say that for the record. But also, my brother-in-law is vegan, and I think there was a couple of times where just looking up to Uncle Johnny and seeing him be vegan, be super healthy and athletic, and all the things, and it makes a big difference when you have role models in your life.
That's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's a good story.
So you mentioned it earlier, and I really want to touch on this because the good and bad news is there's so much food innovation right now. The good news is the vegetarian and vegan sections of our frozen freezer aisles and really our grocery stores are massive. Like, you've never had more plant-based choices in our grocery stores than like literally ever before. And I imagine that's going to continue to boom as it has in the last 5 years. The cons is there's a whole bunch of vegan junk food out there. So how do we make better choices when we're shopping?
Yeah, I agree with you. And some of those, look, I love that there are companies out there that are mimicking meat and whatnot because they're bringing people over, and it's an easy transition food.
Yeah.
But then kind of when you get here, you need to start eating healthier and looking for things that are made from whole food ingredients and minimally processed. So certainly the label makes a big difference. How many ingredients are in it? What can you recognize the ingredients? Do they make sense to you? The saturated fat levels, that's key, because one of the things that a lot of these companies that are mimicking meat or dairy are doing is substituting animal fat with oils. So you'll get fat that comes from oils. And the problem with oils is it takes away all the fiber and makes a really calorie dense food that just adds pounds, and so it's and clogs up your arteries and things like that. So you really don't want a lot of oil. That's not to say that you shouldn't have some, because I think it's hard to cook without it.
Right.
A true whole food plant-based diet wouldn't have any oil, but it's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
But you just need to limit it. And so those are the kind of things that I focus on when I look at a package.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I think over the last year, pandemic aside, when I go grocery shopping, I try to actually give myself enough time to stop and read the labels, not just kind of go on autopilot and rush in, rush out and get stuff. I really try to make that a ritual every week. No kids come with me. It's just me. And,
Right.
I give myself at least an hour. I'm the slowest slowpoke in the grocery store because I really am taking that time and intention to read the labels. I think it's important.
It's very important. Yeah, you can definitely get snowed by something that looks healthy on the front that you actually turn over and find out, no, that's really not healthy at all.
Totally.
Or sugar's the number one ingredient, or things like that. Yeah.
Yes. And I hate to say it, being back in the States, not overseas in the UK, there is so much additives and preservatives and, chemically colors and things that are added to food that you just that is a 6-syllable word. I don't even know what that is. What that is, that ingredient. Why is it number 5 in this food? It's not good for us.
And that is the reason why some people regularly shop at stores like Sprouts and Whole Foods and places, because their buyers will go through and they don't allow certain things in, certain chemicals and whatnot they won't allow in, which is good. It might be a little more expensive sometimes, but it definitely helps to limit that and create kind of that buffer for you.
Yeah.
But even there are some things that aren't, they still carry things with very high and saturated fats and whatnot, but you've just got to be careful yourself.
So I have to share a funny story. My brother, Zig, who I hope is listening to this episode right now. Hello, Zig.
Yeah.
He and I are very close. He's 7 years my senior. And recently he said, you know what, Mary? I think I'm going to go on the carnivore diet. I'm just all meat, no plants, no vegetables, no nothing. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, really? I say this lovingly, Zig. Don't hang up now. Don't stop the podcast, because I think this is really important. He started doing that, smoking his own meats, doing all the things. And then I think about a month into it, started having some serious issues with his digestion and pains in his stomach and all of that. There's got to be a link to that, surely, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned before, if you're eating all meat and dairy, you're getting zero fiber. There is no fiber in your diet because fiber only comes from plants. And if you don't have fiber, you don't move things through.
Ugh.
That's what moves things through and just keeps your blood flowing and clears your arteries and all that. So you're getting zero of it on a carnivore diet. And your skin's going to be, I've seen people on that diet and their skin's kind of pasty looking, and it's just it's not healthy.
Yeah. And I really feel for him, because I think he's gone to see doctors and all the things, and they can't seem to give him a clear direction. And I'm like, maybe it's because you don't have any vegetables. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Maybe that's it. But I think that what's tricky with these diets, all the diets that ever come out, there is going to be somebody who cheers very, very loudly. There's probably an influencer of some, backing it, that makes it look like this is the thing, right? We've seen it in the last 50 years, certainly. But I just worry that it is not healthy, not good for the physical body to just eat meat and fats like that.
Yeah, and I think the low-carb trends that have been going on forever, the low-carb diets, they really... You can lose weight quickly for a very short period of time.
Yeah.
But you almost always get, I did it for many years trying to do those low carb diets and the sugar busters and whatnot. And the problem is our body craves carbs. We need carbs because that's what the cells use to grow. And so if you starve it of that, yes, you will shed some pounds, but you'll be miserable during the whole process. And ultimately you'll end up eating back more of it. And I always ended up gaining more weight than I lost in the past. When you switch to a whole food plant-based diet, I lost 25 pounds in the first year that I was on the diet. And it's really a lifestyle. It's not a diet.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was I was never hungry and I was never miserable. Usually you're counting calories, you're worrying about how much you've eaten. I did none of that. I ate whenever I was hungry. I ate until I was full, and I never even thought about it. And weight would just disappear. I'd go to where I'd weigh myself at the gym every week, and I'd think, well, for sure this week I didn't lose any weight because I ate a lot of stuff. And sure enough, there was another pound or two or something. It was really quite shocking, and it did not at all feel like a diet, and that's, I think, the difference.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on there, because I think that's what's hard is any of these new fad diets that are out there. You get that quick weight loss because your body goes, woo, this is different, and then it sheds. But then at some point, your internal thermometer, if you will, it brings you back to the weight that you normally were, or if not higher, right? And it's interesting for me with a plant-based and vegetarian diet. Still need to remove the dairy. I've noticed the same. I could eat so much and of good, clean, whole foods and never feel starving or hungry or deprived whatsoever.
Yeah, and just a little comment about the dairy. One of the reasons that you love the dairy so much isn't even necessarily the taste. It's the casomorphine in dairy. It's a drug. Yeah. It's a drug that's there primarily, I guess, to keep the calf calm so it doesn't run off from the herd and get eaten by something, right? So they drink dairy. A calf drinks dairy basically from birth to about 8 months to grow to full size, and then they never drink it again. We keep drinking it forever. And yes, we get that casomorphine that makes us addicted to it and theoretically calms you a little bit. But once you get past it, and it takes about a week once you get past that draw, you never want it again.
Yeah. So maybe that's the next challenge for me, Tyler, is that let me give it a week. Let me see what my cravings are like, what my stomach situation, my digestive system feels like for a week without any sort of dairy. Because the hardest thing, I think, is what you just said. But equally, the emotional attachment. You go, ice cream.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice in the summer. Or, some cheesy nachos. Oh, wouldn't that be a treat? You have these emotional, nostalgic attachments to food as well that I think are hard to break.
You do, but I will point you in the direction of something called So Delicious, very vanilla cashew ice cream. And we eat it in our family, and I try not to limit how much, but we all swear it tastes just like vanilla ice cream. You wouldn't know the difference. It's really delicious.
I'm putting that on my grocery list. Let's try it out.
Yeah, and it's made from cashews, and it's very, very good.
Gosh, incredible.
But,
just to wrap up, anybody that is listening and struggling with their digestion, either they're having for lack of better words, explosive poos or no poos at all, what would you recommend as a next step for improving their digestion today?
Yeah, well, I'm not a doctor, so everybody's different. Yeah. But I would highly recommend just trying. And one of the things you can do is just do Vegan Monday, or just do Vegan Monday and Friday or something. Do it a couple days a week and just show yourself, oh my God, there are foods out here. I can find this stuff. And when I walk down to the grocery store, or when I walk to the Chipotle is a great place to, get beans and rice and a burrito bowl, basically.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of options out there, and give it a try. It will. I would definitely say, if you've got digestive issues, try giving up dairy, number one, and then trying to get a lot more plants in your high fiber plants into your diet.
One of the ways that you can do that is certainly go to your local Sprouts farmers market. They have cool beans. They have these incredible plant-based frozen wraps, and there are 3 different flavors currently, right? So what are those, and what do they taste like?
Yeah, so our 3 flavors, we've got spicy chipotle, which is quite spicy. So if you don't like hot stuff, stay away from that one. Tikka masala, which is kind of a mild flavor, which is an Indian flavoring. And then Moroccan Gold, which is more of a savory, kind of a sweet and savory. It's got sweet potatoes and millet and kidney beans. And all 3 of those flavors are available at Sprouts and Wegmans and several other stores. And it's in the frozen aisle. It takes about a minute and a half. Or about 2 minutes to cook. You flip it over halfway.
Yeah.
And so it's very simple and easy, and gives you a lot of fiber, about 5 grams of fiber, and no saturated fat. 1 gram of sugar added, which is in the wrap. It's a gluten-free wrap.
Yeah.
So it's very clean ingredients.
I've tried them. They're excellent. And you know what I think is really nice about these? This wouldn't be my full diet. I'm not going to eat cool beans every lunch and dinner for the whole week. But if I'm running behind and I haven't actually prepped a meal for something on the go, or just need a little snack, these have been really, really helpful for me and for my family. So just having a few of them in the freezer, just ready to go, so that you're making a good choice rather than pressing the big red F it button. I think that's the secret. Yeah. That's what helps keep you on track and keep your digestion on track as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got 17 different plants in our 3 wraps that are on the market. There's 17 different plants, so you're halfway there.
There you go.
We've got 2 more flavors coming out this summer that'll add 7 more, so you'll be up to 24 between the 5.
Brilliant. So their website is eatcoolbeans.com. You can find the stores where these products are sold. And again, Sprouts, if you're in America, or Wegmans, is definitely a place where you can find them in the frozen freezer aisle. And I think that there's a misconception of frozen foods are all like, oh, so zapped of all their nutritional value. These are not the case, right?
No, actually, the new cryogenic flash freezing methods lock in all the nutrient value, and they actually have very small particles of ice versus if you just froze it naturally in your freezer. And as a result, they don't break the cell membrane. And so you get the same taste, same texture, and same look and feel of the product. So I'd actually say they lock in both the flavor and the nutrients better than even fresh, which has had to travel, in the produce aisle, travel 2 weeks or 3 weeks, get sprayed with chemicals and is, getting close to going bad.
God, it's so fascinating. So yeah, go check them out, see if you like them, and report back. Let me know here at the Simplifiers. You can just tag us on Instagram at the Simplifiers and let us know. So as we wrap up, Tyler, and again, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and time. I mean, to be in this industry and to co-found a business like this, you have to know your stuff when it comes to plant-based foods. You can't just put more vegan junk food out in the world. So I really appreciate your attention to detail, and it just really shows that you guys care about what you're putting in your products.
Absolutely. Thank you. We really do, for sure.
So just to wrap up, a few questions I like to ask all of our guests. And again, thanks so much for being here. So my first question is this: what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Yeah, one of the most interesting books I've read recently, it was probably a couple of years ago, was called The Water Will Come by Dr. Jeff Goodell. And it's all about, it looks at 7 or 8 major cities around the world and the impacts of sea level rise and what the estimated sea level rise is going to be, which is a lot more than what the world thinks or what most people think. And it's just a fascinating read to see what could happen in places like New York and Miami and Tokyo. And I highly recommend it for everyone.
Such an interesting book suggestion. I had actually heard something recently about that, like Malta is disappearing as an island. It boggles my mind. It's wild.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
So we'll put the link in the show notes. People want to check that out, thesimplifierspodcast.com. You can find that book. So tell us, who is one person in your network, somebody you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, I would highly recommend Dr. Lori Mayoras, who has a podcast, Healthy Nation. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it is. But what's really fascinating is she's created the plant-based telemedicine group. And so they are doctors across the country that are vegan doctors and treating people through telemedicine and helping them make the transition. And I think it's great what they're doing, because more and more, there's so few doctors really know the impact of nutrition on people. And it's nice to see somebody that does.
Yeah, I love it. So we will link her up in the show notes. If people want to find her podcast or the work that she's doing out in the world, you can find it there as well. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful that I've had this opportunity. I've been a private equity investor for 20 some years and always kind of wanted to be an entrepreneur, and to be able to step onto this side and bring really healthy, good products that are good for the environment, make me feel good about what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, that's great. Sure. So again, the website is called eatcoolbeans.com. That you can listen to other podcasts that Tyler has been on, as well as finding out where you can buy these wraps in your local grocery store or otherwise, or just to learn more about the products that they're putting out in the world. In our show notes, we will have links to your social media. So if people want to plug in there and check things out, you certainly can as well. So my final question for you today is this, and again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, someone somewhere, maybe my brother, is listening to us right now, and they're thinking, you know what? My stomach feels horrible. Whatever I am eating is not working for me, though I won't admit it to my sister.
Yes.
What's one thing you could whisper into their ear just to encourage them in this moment?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say it's a lot easier than you think. I mean, most people think and again, try it for one day, because what's the downside to doing one day a week? And there are so many choices now. compared to what it was 20 years ago, it's really available to you. And so, yeah, give it a try.
Yeah, yeah. And it's okay if whatever you're doing right now isn't working. Because obviously you don't want to perpetuate the thing that's not working. Try something different.
And you don't have to be 100%. Look, if you're 90%, you're still going to be a lot better off. And you might as well try. Don't worry about perfection. Just do what you can.
Do the thing. Tyler, thank you so much for your time today.
This has been great, Mary. Thank you very much for having me on.